running back, since you just mentioned James Robinson. James Robinson is featured on your article as someone to target in the late rounds. What do you like about Robinson, obviously outside of week 17?
Sorry about that. No, you know what? I like Robinson because I feel, and I think Brandon, you kind of turned me on to him recently. We were talking about those, him and Etienne, and they're both super cheap. Not super cheap, but they're both cheaper for that backfield where it's not, James Robinson has a habit of stealing the backfield and coming into the season, everyone assumes that, he's going to be kind of, I think it may be more of a 1A, 1B rather than so I think that, Robinson is coming off an injury. He's a little bit, they both are, but he's a little bit, more behind than Etienne. But I think that it's one of those things where, last year I feel like doesn't count, right? It's the Urban Meyer, like they didn't use that backfield at all. They didn't do what it was just really bad usage, really bad volume for James Robinson. And I feel like based on where he's being drafted right now, which is in the 13th round, I feel like he's someone that you can definitely target if you're going with a 0 RB or a here RB or anything like that. Like we said, he's a good cheap piece if you're going to stack the Jags. And I just like him there. I feel like there's other guys in that area that people are flocking to where I love to sprinkle in some Robinson because I feel like, all he does is go in there and steal jobs. So I feel like this might be another one of those seasons where now that he has a different coaching situation and Urban Meyer is gone and they may actually use him properly. And he may be more of a 1B as opposed to the backup.
Two things. Number one, I keep saying this, and you're right. Like, Doug Peterson could suck. Be terrible, right? And be a massive upgrade at coach over what the Jags had last year.
You're starting from the bottom.
Yeah.
The absolute barrel bottom that you can possibly start from.
That was the most disarray and horrible coaching I've seen in the NFL in my 40 years. You know what I mean? Like, it just... and number two, the Robinson sprinkle needs to be a dance. I need this. I need the Robinson sprinkle.
I kind of like that.
Yeah. Jen does the Robinson sprinkle. You get a couple Diet Cokes in her, and you get the Robinson sprinkle. Who's next? I see you've got Khalil Herbert on there, who I loved last year going into the draft. I was excited to see him get an opportunity in Chicago. He played well. You've got him featured as a late round target as well. What do you like about Herbert?
Well, I think that it's a situation where we don't really know what's going to happen in that offense. And I think David Montgomery, he's good, or is he not? Like, we're not 100% sure, right? He's kind of been hurt. And yes, he had some good moments, but I don't know if he can be the guy. If he's the guy, he's the guy. But I feel like Herbert kind of showed us what he can do. And I feel like he deserves to, get some more volume this year. And I think, based on where he's being drafted, he's RB 51. Why not? Yeah, he's definitely someone that I do like. I will say, though, I really like Gainwell. He's growing on me. The more research that I did on him, I'm kind of like, wait a minute. I actually really feel like he's in a really good spot. He had the highest target rate per snap last year at 16.8 on anyone on the Eagles. He had the second largest team target share among rookies after Najee Harris. So I feel like he's kind of an afterthought, and I feel like, or at least from drafters, but I feel like that team, Nick Sirianni, they drafted him for a reason. And I feel like he's going to end up being a guy, especially in underdog or any kind of PPR format. I think he's going to surprise some people. And he's a 14th rounder. And I think that, if something were to happen to Miles Sanders, which, we've seen that happen in the past, I feel like he can just go right in. And I think he's going to be a lot better than people are kind of giving him credit for in that offense this season. So I'm kind of secretly excited about him, and he's been sneaking up on my board a little bit.
I like that. Chris, thoughts on Gainwell and your approach to late round running back targeting in best ball?
So late round running back targeting is kind of akin to quarterbacks because we just want those spike weeks out of those guys. There's no expectation that they're going to come in and on a week-to-week basis have any sort of, let's say, standalone value, like outside of an injury. That's more for the middle round guys. Let's say like the Tony Pollards of the world, the Alexander Madisons of the world, like the guys that we know could possibly have like some sort of blip on the screen, like Tony Pollard can rush into the end zone, something like that, and wind up having a good week. But it's just more of the guys that if something were to happen, can they, one, take the starting role, and two, are they also going to be the primary worker from a rushing perspective on that team? Like, is the team going to just summarily sign a veteran in order to create some sort of running back tandem and create that murk that we just don't want from a fantasy standpoint? And that's the archetype that we should be targeting. And that's why Khalil Herbert was the perfect example for that, because last year that's exactly what happened. Like, we had no idea what Herbert was going to be coming into the season. The Bears did, and that's why they were just fine with giving him the rock and letting him run with David Montgomery's job, quite literally, like while Montgomery was injured. So that's the type of archetype that we should be targeting, like once we get into the late rounds. And so that's why I wholeheartedly agree with like all the things that like Jen was just saying, and all of those guys, they are definitely on my list as well. One guy that I'm looking at, I mean, Darrell Henderson, like he literally had that job last year. Like when Cam Akers was out, we thought there was going to be all this murk because it was going to be him, Jake Funk, Xavier, what was his last name?
Xavier Woods, Xavier Woods, that was a good week of Twitter buzz.
Exactly, Xavier Woods, like everybody wanted to rush and get him because nobody wanted to draft like Henderson because of the way that his 2020 season ended. There's just no way that he was going to be able to be a useful fantasy producer, and he was. I mean, for the most part, until he got injured himself, which everybody kind of predicted coming into it. But I'm not 100% sold on Cam Akers. Like, please don't come at my mentions or whatever. And I'm not a Cam Akers hater. I'm not, but I'm just saying that over the course of the NFL playoffs, I mean, Cam Akers, like he was starting to lose work, like to the other running backs that were in that backfield. This was a team that Cam Akers was supposed to be the most efficient receiving back, like on that team. He was losing targets like throughout the playoffs. I mean, this was a team that was also passing more and more in the red zone, and Cam Akers was not a part of that. So if the receiving game is not going to be a thing for him moving forward, because now that they have A-Rob, we don't know if they're going to bring back Odell Beckham after his injury stuff gets. We know what Cooper Kupp can be, Van Jefferson, all these other guys, Tyler Higbee, insert name here. So if the targets are now in question, Darrell Henderson was a much more efficient running back last year. He was 7th in success rate, according to Football Outsiders. So where's the rushing production going to come from in order to sustain Akers' current ADP? That gap between Akers, who's going in, the third-ish round, and Darrell Henderson, who's all the way down at RB47, I do not understand that like one bit. So I would be much happier taking a running back attached to an efficient offense, which we still believe the Rams to be, and just go from there, especially when we know that if Akers does have a setback, Henderson can be the guy to come in and take over that workload. As of right now, there's no competition behind him in order to really push him for a 1A, 1B, like a Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams type of situation. So, I mean, Henderson fits that profile for me, which is why I'm targeting him so much in best ball right now.
And he's cheap. He's super affordable. You can grab him way late. He's a nice target in that way. I love me some Cam Akers, and I'm rooting for him, but it's hard to argue with your facts there, Chris. You and your facts.
Me and my facts.
Dean Martin used to say, if you're going to use logic, if you're going to argue with logic, I don't want to chit-chat. That's what he used to say. There you go. Yeah. I'm targeting Nyheim Hines. You talked about that Colts offense. And Matt Ryan. Per Sports Info Solutions, Matt Ryan targeted the running back last year, the second most in the league behind Justin Herbert. Now, obviously, a lot of that's because Cordero Patterson was the guy, and he was suddenly a running back. So that's part of it. But still, Matt Ryan traditionally targeted Devontae Freeman a ton in the passing game all those years, targeted even Tevin Coleman in that 1-2 punch that they had. So Matt Ryan can use the running back. Nyheim Hines got paid last year, so they want him in the offense. He's good catching the ball, had a down year. He was the RB 53 last year, but the year before he was the RB 20 in 0.5 PPR, and he's being drafted right now as the RB 48. That's where he's being drafted. So you can draft him for basically what he was last year with the upside of RB 20 2 years ago, and now he's got that quarterback improvement. I think the Colts offense in general will be better. And if you look, he's kind of on an every other year track. Like, he was the RB 49 in 2019. He was RB 33 in 2018. So I think he's going to be a value no matter where you get him. And I think you're going to get the spike weeks that you saw in 2020. You're going to get those again this year as he finds the end zone in a better offense. So I like Hines.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think if I'm remembering correctly, last season, Nyheim Hines was top 12 in both yards per route run, per attempt, and also top 12 in an average depth of target for all running backs last year. So think about that. He wasn't just catching just like dump offs or anything like that. He was actually running like legitimate routes. That's why we've seen already reports about, I mean, of course, like we were talking before the show, it's fluff piece season. It's best shape of, their life like season. That's what it is right now. But seeing reports or tweets about Nyheim Hines lining up with the wide receivers, I mean, those things have already started to circulate. Chris Ballard coming out and saying they're going to get him involved. Frank Reich, I think, literally quoted saying if he was in a fantasy football league, he would be drafting Nyheim Hines. And this is going like way far back. But Frank Reich has been, an offensive coordinator since like 2015, or offensive coordinator head coach since 2015. In 2015, when he was part of the San Diego Chargers at that point, the two running backs on that team were Melvin Gordon and Danny Woodhead. And if I had to guess or look at what he currently has right now, like with Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines, like those two running backs fit like that archetype of player more so than any other pairing that he's currently had. Because think about the running backs that they had in Philadelphia. Ryan Matthews, like LeGarrette Blount. Darren Sproles, sure, but just like never that combination of two backs that could be a slasher or like a power back, but then also have a shifty pass catching back as well with some speed to him. So it's just, and that year in 2015, like with the Chargers, they were first in targets to the running back while in the red zone. Now, of course, that was Phillip Rivers, but like Matt Ryan back then, like Matt Ryan now and Phillip Rivers back in 2015, that's not all too dissimilar. So it's just, I'm pretty high on Nyheim Hines. So I'm with you there, man.